occurs to me that I've been talking too much about what I'm seeing lately. And it occurs to me that people, they don't really want to see the news. They want to hear stories. The news isn't a story until tomorrow, but we can look back. And I'm rather surprised that I wrote this in 2013 at 6:47 a.m. on a Sunday in October. But that in itself, it's a story that's nearly a decade old when I wrote it. And so, why not talk about something that happened before? I just opened one of my notebooks where I scrabble stuff down. And, well, we'll see how it goes. Do you think I read this stuff? Who's got time to read when you don't even have time to write? You have to find the time. At some point, you have to find a way to make it your life, because it is your life. And if you don't write it down, then your life is lost. Think of all our grandparents. I mean, my grandma screwed old Jack down the road instead of my grandpa, and nobody knows how it went. Was it in the woods? I'm pretty sure. They were out there in Johannesburg. You just throw some woman in a ditch there and everything's going to be okay as long as she complies. And then you get me. As we went, I watched the ravens fluttering about, too far away to get near. At the end of our descent, probably still 10 to 12,000 feet above sea level, put us on an open plain about the size of a football field. Jerry was excited. He'd brought a Frisbee all the way from the U.S. Had been talking about a place we were going to make camp along our pilgrimage where he'd been aspiring to play with it. This was the place. I've never been much for Frisbee. All you'd have to do is to watch the old home movie of me at about 3 years old trying to throw one, and you'd know why. I was never very good at it. I've never been much for Frisbee, but if Jerry was going to make such a big deal of it being part of the pilgrimage, I just figured I was going to have to go along with it. There, in the finger-numbing cold, in the middle of that field, with the biting wind howling across it, Jerry dropped the stuff he was carrying and dug in to get his Frisbee. When he pulled it out, he had that Buddhist smile of his going. He's a great smile, the kind that's infectious. And I could see why when he held up the Frisbee. It was a good one, the kind that will fly forever. And we were in the perfect place for it, other than the cold and the wind. Just then, the vault came toward us. Ballet came toward us out of the trees at the end of the clearing, hollering and waving at his arms. I don't know how, but he was somehow always wherever we were going, with a horse, a burro, and our packs. He was always there first, waiting. I guess he wasn't fucking around. The guy came across the field to us, and he and Jerry started arguing. Obviously about where we were going to camp. The dude pointing to the woods he'd come out of, and Jerry to the ground we were standing on. I could see Jerry was determined to play with that damned Frisbee. There on the high plain, in sacred lands, at the rooftop of the world. Maybe that white devil, Baigwe, could snap a few shots of him pitching the disc with the monk. But the valet wasn't taking no for an answer. And that's the only one he was giving Jerry. I still don't really know why that dude was so dead set against making camp out in that biting cold field with the wind howling across it, threatening to tear our clothes right off us. Maybe he didn't want to walk against the sacred direction of the mountain. Maybe if Jerry wanted to sleep in the open air without shelter, the guy would have been okay with it. But counterclockwise was the only way our gear was coming back to us. Sure, the guy already sinned by coming back for Jerry to argue with him, but maybe the horse didn't feel right about it. I've got no problem with it, but my donkey, he feels offended. You have to apologize to my donkey. Whatever his reasons, he made them in a language I didn't understand, while I stood around looking at the light dying in the sky. Whatever his reasons, he made them, and Jerry caved. He took that Frisbee he carried from another country, from another religion, and hucked it artlessly as hard as he could. The wind took it, flying off at a really bad angle into the trees. Jerry picked up his stuff and started tromping off in the direction the dude had already gone. I asked, "Aren't you gonna go get it?" He said, "No, leave it," and kept going. I do believe that whole 5 to 10 minute episode would make a pretty good short film of what it looks like to crush a person's dream. There. That's an aspect, right? I mean, look. Anybody wants to steal my story, I've got it on paper. There's much more to it than that. There's sex, there's aggression, the threats of people's lives, ghost stories, speaking into your head. There's all kinds of stuff coming in the forthcoming novel, China Winter.